Welcome back to HPP, the show that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I'm joined by Jake Kopsick. Jake, how you doing? You look a little sunburned.
Am I? I think that's just my lighting. I don't get out in the sun enough. And believe me, if I was in there, I'd have sunscreen or some long sleeves or a hat on. I'm pretty much bulletproof at this point. And it's definitely not from the beach because I haven't been in a while. And even when I'm there, I sit underneath an umbrella. So I stay out of the sun. I think me and the sun have a mutual agreement to stay out of each other's way. I'm a little bit tired. Been a long week at work, but that's all right. But I gotta say, Rich, I was doing well until this morning. I saw the Pac-12 news. So Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and my San Diego State Aztecs, not next year, the year after, will be departing the Mountain West Conference. We'll be trying to invigorate the Pac-12. They'll be bringing back Pac-12 cast-offs, Oregon State and Washington State with them. However, they need 8 teams to at least meet NCAA requirements.
Right.
So they're going to need some more joiners. I think UNLV, I think Utah State could be pretty good as far as basketball and not only football goes, too.
Yeah.
But very sad day. I tweeted out, Rich, I've said it so many times, I'm even tired of hearing myself say it. You know how many days I wrecked my sleep schedule and went into work with bags under my eyes the next day because I was up for the 11:30 tip-off in the Mountain West, and it was worth it every single time. I tweeted out today, great fan bases, some of the best some of the best home court advantages in the entire country reside in the Mountain West. Viejas Arena at San Diego State. It's one of the hardest places to play, not only on the West Coast, but in all of America. The Pit at New Mexico, notorious hard place to play. There's altitude in this league, which is a factor. And then, hey, Rich, if you watch college basketball and you watch the West Coast games, you know that Utah State and having to go to Logan is one of the hardest places to play in the country. That's a place where ranked teams go to die. Raucous atmosphere, altitude.
Creighton did this past season.
It's the games were great. The fan bases are great. The home atmospheres are great. And the Mountain West Conference tournament, Rich, for me is appointment television during conference tournament week. It's one of the best conference tournaments, best conferences top to bottom. How about the half-court shot that Jared Lucas hit at Colorado State to basically send them to the tournament? So many great finishes. Not to mention you have San Diego State, who made a Sweet 16 and then made the championship game the year before. So very sad to see the Mountain West break up. We'll watch it this year.
Is there anything preventing the whole conference from just becoming the Pac whatever?
I don't see why. I mean, maybe a team like Air Force, maybe it's tough for some of the lower teams, but like Fresno State, for probably football reasons, is one of the first teams in there. So I don't know what that deal would be because you'd have to account for Oregon State and Washington State joining you. Now, regionally, it's not an issue for those teams, but we'll see what happens because they're going to need 2 more, at least. So I'm sure the exodus from the transition from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 will continue. But I got to say, Rich, very, very sad day for me and college basketball fans everywhere.
I heard not too long ago that the Mountain West was kind of dragging its feet on including Oregon State and Washington. They wanted to, have I don't know if they wanted to have a longer deal with them or if they wanted to join the conference, but whatever it was, the Mountain West was it sounded to me, the way the article was written at least, that the Mountain West was just kind of thumbing its nose. We're fine. We don't need you. So I wonder if they're a victim of their own overconfidence here.
Well, another thing is, remember last offseason, we had talked about San Diego State wanting to basically secede from the Mountain West and join the Pac-12. And of course, the Pac-12 dissolved. There was a major lawsuit that would have had major financial ramifications for San Diego State if that happened. I think another thing to point out, Rich, is that the Mountain West just moved to 20 conference games. And they're in a nice spot with the Big East where I believe they have the 11 teams to make it work. And this is the first year they're going to go to that. Because sometimes I was like, is it fair that San Diego State, they have to go to Utah State and other teams get to go to San Jose or Fresno, where it's not as hard of a team and an environment. But I think maybe that also affects things. Now it can be very linear for them, even though the Mountain West is going to kind of fizzle away here soon. Like they have enough teams to move to a concrete 20-game schedule where it's a double home and home.
Right. Yeah. And of course, well, now the West Coast Conference, they were looking stronger than ever in basketball with the addition of Oregon State and Washington State, but apparently that's only going to last a year, right?
Yeah, and I think I don't think that's really going to be of issue to the West Coast Conference, because coming in next year is Seattle and Grand Canyon. You're going to get one of the biggest brands with a ton of money in college basketball. So I don't think that's really going to affect the WCC much at all to rent these guys for a year.
Right. And the Grand Canyon, of course, has a lot of money because, at least not according to Grand Canyon, but according to everybody else, they are the only school in Division I that is for profit.
And they're publicly traded.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So in this episode, we're going to continue with our mid-major conference previews. Last week we covered the AEC, the ASUN, the Big Sky, the Big South, the Big West, the Horizon, the MAC, the MAC, or the Mid-Atlantic, the MEAC, the Northeastern Conference, the Ohio Valley, and the Patriot, and also the SWAC and the Summit. Excuse me. This week, we will cover the Colonial, CUSA, the Ivy League, the Missouri Valley Conference, the SoCon, the Southland, the Sun Belt, and the WAC. And now what distinguishes these conferences that we're covering today is that last year, I think all of these conferences had an outside shot to get more than one bid. And they may be in a similar position this year. So we're kind of separating these out as the best of the one bid mid-major schools. And at the end of the episode, Jake and I will rank our top 10 teams from all the teams we've covered over the past 2 episodes. So let's begin by briefly reviewing the conferences that we covered last week, just in case, because we kind of did rapid fire last week. The other thing is I may have changed my picks because there was a couple of conferences where I know I've changed my picks, and to be quite honest, I can't exactly remember. So we're going to review our picks for sure, because I looked at all these conferences a little closer. So in the American East, Jake and I both liked Vermont to win the conference and Earl Timberlake to win conference MVP. By the way, Jake, if you have something to say that you rethought about since the last episode, just shoot it right in there when I pause in between conferences.
Okay.
In the Atlantic Sun, we were very, very much in agreement that we liked Lipscomb. And though on the conference MVP, we had a difference of opinion. Jake liked Jacob Ognasovich of Lipscomb, and I liked Robert McCray of Jacksonville. In the Big Sky, we had a little difference of opinion. Actually, we didn't. I thought one of us picked Weber, but we both went with Montana State, though Jake picked Blaze Threet to win MVP of Weber State. I went out on a limb and picked Jay Mullins of Montana State, a transfer from Washington State, who actually had a dreadful year last year, but the year before that, he played pretty well. And he started with St. Mary's and was a pretty high recruit. He was a 4-star, I believe. So then in the Big South, we both loved High Point, and we both picked Kwame Hamilton, who was recently on the show as conference MVP. In the Big West, now I know we had a difference of opinion here. Jake went with Santa Barbara. I went with UC Irvine, and we both picked I stand corrected again. Jake went with Bent Leucheten of Irvine as MVP. I went with Ty Johnson of UC Davis as MVP. Then in the horizon, we also had a difference of opinion here. Jake went with Milwaukee, and he also went with A.J. McKee, the transfer from Queens, as the MVP. I went with Northern Kentucky and Jalen Jackson, the wing or guard from Fort Wayne, to win this conference. This is going to be a fun conference, the Horizon. I feel that Milwaukee is really good. I think Northern Kentucky is really good. I think Wright State and Fort Wayne are going to be right there. Then in the Mid-Atlantic, we were hands down in agreement. Quinnipiac and their best player, Amari Trice, will win Player of the Year. In the MAC, the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, Jake and I both like Ohio, and we both like the Player of the Year to come from Ohio, though Jake likes point guard Sharif Mitchell, and I like forward center AJ Clayton. So that's the only difference we have there, but we both really like Ohio. I think actually that Ohio has a third Player of the Year candidate on its team, and Jackson Pavletsky, the transfer from Iowa State. Then we go down to the Mid-Eastern. Again, we were very much in agreement here. Howard, we expect, I think you said Howard's been there 3 of the last 4 years?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and they retained 3 of their 5 best players, including what we think is the best player in the conference, Bryce Harris. And they also brought in some interesting recruits. And some players you're probably very familiar with in Anwar Gill, LaSalle, a kid from Syracuse who I'm not familiar with. His name is Monir Haima. He must have been a kid, a freshman or something that didn't play much. And then Jalen Johnson of Dartmouth, who is one of the better players for Dartmouth, which might not be saying a ton, but anyway, we both went with Howard and Bryce Harris as the Player of the Year. In the Northeastern Conference, we had a difference of opinion. Jake went with Wagner, and their player, Keontae Lewis, is the MVP. I went with Central Connecticut, and Jalen McGlone of Central Connecticut is the MVP. He went to my alma mater, East Stroudsburg, who was in the running, is a top 25 team last year in D2. In the Ohio Valley, we both went with Little Rock, and we both went with a Little Rock player as Player of the Year. Jake took Jonathan Lawson. I took KK Robinson, and that kind of tells you, what you need to know. This is a conference that was really wiped clean by graduation and transfers. One correction I want to make is we talked about Mikhail Mitchell being on Little Rock. He has graduated, moved on to the pros, but they do have Mwani Wilkinson from LSU. Now, Mwani is, I believe he's a super senior, graduate senior. Never quite lived up to his potential, to his 4-star ranking, but he's a glue guy, can do a little bit of everything. And you put those 3 Division high major players in Robinson, Lawson, and Wilkinson, and Little Rock seems to be the cream of the crop here. Moving down to the Patriot, we had a split here. Jake went with the Colgate, who's won the league how many times in a row, Jake?
I think it's 6 of the last 7 or 7 of the last 8. Matt Langel absolutely dominated this conference. Besides Vermont, you won't see a guy that does it better in a team that wins that consistently in a 1-bid league. Right.
And you went with their center, Jeff Woodward, as the Player of the Year. I took a little bit of a gamble. American is returning their core, including their best player, Matt Rogers. So I picked American win this conference, plus Rogers to be Player of the Year. A story I probably never told you. When Notre Dame, before they hired their current coach, who was at Penn State and then moved over,
Micah Shrewsbury.
Before they hired Shrewsbury, they did that pretty quickly, but there was a window. I talked to a Notre Dame, a high official in Notre Dame basketball, not the head coach, because he was fired. Or no, he left. Mike Bray had left, but it wasn't a coach. And I suggested Colgate's coach. And I thought he would have been a perfect fit, but apparently they went a different direction.
You
So,
did tell me this, and I think it's a look. I mean, he deals with high academic standards in the Patriot League already, and like quite frankly, if I see a guy like that can win at a hard place and not only win, Rich, but dominate,
right.
he
Right.
could make that jump.
That's why I suggested it, because, I mean, obviously he's not bringing in high level players, but nobody in the Patriot League is bringing in high level players. And as you said, we're talking high academic standards here. My son, for example, Lehigh, he didn't have Ivy League scholarships, but he was considering going to Ivy League schools. And Lehigh was on his, like his final five. So that's how good they are academically. All right. So then in the Southwestern Conference, the SWAC, we both went with Grambling. Player of the year, we both went with Deshaun Ruffin of Jackson State. And then lastly, in the Summit League, we split. I went with North Dakota State and Isaac McBride as player of the year. You went with South Dakota State and Washington State transfer big man Oscar Clough, who's now playing for San Diego State. So now today we will start with the Colonial Athletic Association, or excuse me, Coastal Athletic Association. It's still the CAA, but
Yep.
no, but it's now the Coastal. So last year, Charleston won both the regular season championship and the tournament championship to go to the NCAAs. The player of the year is Tyler Thomas from Hofstra, who's moved on to the pros. Hofstra always seems to have the player of the year in this conference, but doesn't win it so much. So Jake, I'm going to let you take it from here. What are you thinking in the Colonial? I think there's a lot of teams that are in the running. The one team I know that's closest to your heart is Drexel. I don't know if we picked them last year, but I know we talked about them being, I think we had them in our preseason mid-major top 10, and because of how many players they were returning, and they've just been wiped out by graduation.
Yeah, graduation and, guys transferring for the last year of eligibility, guys transferring in general with Justin Moore being a young guy. I did pick them to win the conference last year, and they came in as the 2 seed. Amari Williams got hurt in their opening game against Stony Brook in the conference tournament and ended up losing because he missed so much time. And I don't know if he came back in that game, but even still, like, it was close, and Stony Brook went all the way to the championship, and they got a champion. I think it was they went all the way
the runner.
to
They were the runner up. Yeah.
Yeah, they made a good run, and
as a 7 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, if could and would were pots and pans, the world would be a kitchen. You can't dwell on that. But they were very, very good. They won 20 games. It was a banner year. It was the highest win total Zach Spikers had at Drexel. It was it was a deep team, a team that was, they crashed the glass. They played defense. They had, Rich, we probably won't see a defensive player as good as Amari Williams in this league ever again. I mean, he went back to back defensive player of the years in this conference. He was absolutely dominant, was just straight up bigger than a lot of people in this conference, and he blocked everything that came his way.
Right.
So he moves on to Kentucky to go play for Mark Pope with his last year of eligibility. He's really, I think, maxed out what he can show. They did make an NCAA tournament when he was there during the COVID year. So, you can't hold that against him for that. Justin Moore is leaving to go to Loyola Chicago, who I think is going to be a very, very nice piece to fill in for Braden Norris as he departs and graduates. But you look at the rest of the team, and Luke House, very, very good 3-point shooter for them. He graduates. You look at a guy like Lamar Odin, who played a lot of minutes for them. This is a very, very deep team. He leaves. Lucas Monroe, who came over from Penn, which is, I believe, the shortest distance that a transfer's ever made. He might even have, I think I said this last year, his apartment in college, he might have actually lived closer to the DAC than he did the Palestra. That's how close. Literally, when I walk to Penn every day, I walk through Drexel's campus to get there. And I cross the street from Drexel's campus, and I'm already in the back alley of the Palestra. That's how close these two schools are. They're literally separated by Chestnut Street or Market Street.
Right.
So they just lost so much, Rich. Jamie Bergens went to Fairfield, who was a nice defender off the bench. List just goes on and on. They lost so many quality players, and Zach Spiker went the JUCO route, and he brought in 3 JUCO transfers. Didn't bring in a D1 transfer, but he went the JUCO route. Went the JUCO route with some guys that have got some playing experience under their belt. One of which, actually 2 of which, one in a stretch 4 in Victor Panov, who played at Cal State Fullerton before, and then one in Jason Drake, who before playing a year at Butler CC, played at Cleveland State in the Horizon League. So brought in some guys who have some playing experience, but I'm not going to put this team in the same class as like a Charleston or a Towson, who's bringing back a bunch, or with Chris Mack coming in for Charleston is bringing in a bunch, just because they lost so much. And until we see these JUCO guys play for Spiker with a bunch of new guys and a new team with some guys that a Cole Hargrove or Kobe McGee who came on last year, or a guy like Shane Blakeney. Like, there's a lot of guys that in a reserve role, because it was so much in front of them, are going to have to step up. And we're just not sure what that looks like, because we didn't see too much of these guys last year with all the experience and talent that was in front of them. So Drexel, I am definitely going to have, not at that 2 spot and farther down with all that they've lost, but a very, very good league. Let's look at the top here. Towson. Pat Kelsey, believe they made the semis last year before losing to Charleston. Still bring back a bunch. A guy in Nenda Tarky, who always racks up steals, who I think is going to be the defensive player of the year in the conference. Bring back 7 guys. Charleston, even though they lost a bunch with guys transferring out and graduating, Ante Brizovic, one of the best players, best bigs in this conference, he returns. CJ Fulton, who's going to start, he returns. And look at all these guys they brought in, Rich.
Yep.
Darren Boyd, who even off the injury at Lipscomb was a really, really good player when he was there, and I believe still will be a very good player, score a bunch, play a lot for Chris Mack, and start. AJ Smith, talk about a close transfer. I mean, he's already in the same city, at Charleston being at the Citadel. He's going to step in. He put up a bunch of points last year at the Citadel. Lazar Djokovic, who he didn't follow Chris Mack from Xavier to come here, but he did come from Xavier to get there. We'll add another big who didn't play a ton last year, but with an injury to Jerome Hunter and Zach Freemantle, certainly got thrown in the fire more last year. And then another guy to add some more size, Steph Van Bussel from St. Louis, who had to play behind a Bradley Azawiro last year and didn't get to play as much being a young guy and behind some other bigs on that team. There's a lot to like about Charleston. And then you bring in Chris Mack. I mean, don't forget, Rich, this guy, my senior year of high school in 2018, he got Xavier to a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They, of course, lost to Florida State the year in the next round. But guy's got an impressive coaching resume. I know things didn't work out for him at Louisville. He did get him to the tournament the 1 year when they lost to Minnesota in that first game on Thursday. But you're bringing in a really big-time coach who's going to bring in some big-time guys, and he's already got Ante Brizovic there for him. So they're certainly going to be at the top. Hofstra, you talk about, and Rich, they're interesting because Speedy Claxton, all he's done is had that team really competitive in the 3 years that he's been there. They've always been very, very solid. Now, I worry because you look at all that they're losing. You lose Jack O'Fritz. You lose Jaquan Carlos, a really good point of attack defender who was kind of the head of the snake for them, who goes up to Syracuse. And then how about all the scoring?
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
Dubar, he was not just a scorer. He was just a stat sheet stuffer. And I actually thought he should have been player of the year last year. He moves on to Tennessee.
Yeah. And then Tyler Thomas graduates as well, who I believe is the leading scorer in D1 last year, a dude who could just put up a ton of points and was firing up shots as an offensive engine. So this team is losing a ton. But I still trust Speedy Claxton. This will still be a very good team in this conference that will contend in the top 4 or 5 and be at the top here. And I like who they're bringing in. And I don't know, Speedy Claxton's whole thing is to just pluck Iona guys, because I see he's got Silas Sunday here returning. He brings in Cruz Davis, who obviously, not only was at Iona, but followed Patino to St. John's, where unfortunately he didn't see much playing time last year. But another Tobin Anderson Iona guy, Gene Aranguren, I think he's going to put up a lot of points here.
I do too.
And with all the scoring that's departing, I mean, he showed some serious flashes at Iona last year, and Iona was tough because the whole team obviously left with Patino leaving. Tobin Anderson comes in. He's got to throw a team together. They were young. He had spoken about that he had to play the freshmen just because, they needed people to play. So, even with all that, I think Gene Aaron puts up a lot of points, and I think Cruz Davis can actually be a nice player as well in this league. Now that he has a role and we'll see a lot of playing time, and there's a lot of points and touches to go around with the guys leaving. I also want to talk, Rich. I'm going to give you a sleeper here, and it's William and Mary. I love what they did hiring Brian Earl from Cornell. You know anything about what Brian Earl did there? They flew up the court. They played at a rabid pace. They put
10 guys, 10, 11 guys.
Deep. Put up a bunch of threes. Put up, on the court at once. Everybody could shoot. And you look at his newcomers. He's got 2 guys coming from the Ivy League. Does that surprise you at all, Rich? He's got a Brown guy, and he's got Keller Boothby, who could shoot the ball following him from Cornell.
Three guys from the Ivy League.
Jack Scott's actually staying at Princeton. It was a tough. He kind of bounced. It was
when I talked to Cade Pierce, that was just a few weeks ago, and we talked about Jack, and this must happen recently, no?
Because he's not on the William and Mary roster. I looked at their team page. He's not on there.
Well, when we interviewed Cade Pierce, which was about 3 weeks ago, Cade, I mentioned Jack because I said, I thought Jack was an underrated piece that was leaving the team. Yeah.
To be determined. But anyway, they bring back some guys, and I just like the way this guy plays. It's entertaining. They're going to put up a lot of points. And apparently William and Mary's a program that actually has a good bit of money and a good bit of resource that I think Brian Earl's stepping into a good situation.
They're also an excellent academic institution.
Yeah. So, and he's coming from a good one as well and can navigate that stuff. So they're a sleeper for me. And then I want to touch on UNC Wilmington, who very hard place to play. You want to talk about tough environments. Trask Coliseum, a very, very hard place to play for anybody. I mean, Drexel went down there and they had to do a double UNC Wilmington Charleston road trip, and they lost both because those are 2 of the best teams last year. But, one of the hardest places to play. And they're losing Trezarian White, who is a bucket in this league, as he moves on to play for Jamie Dixon and TCU, where he'll play in a system where he can play fast and put up a lot of points again in the Big 12. And as hard as a road environment is this for teams to play in, and I really like what Takeo Siddle's done, I'm going to still roll with Charleston, Rich. And I know Towson's bringing back a bunch. And Pat Scarry is an awesome coach. And he's continuously had this team a contender in this league for quite some time. But I'm going to roll Charleston. You're bringing in a coach that's got big-time pedigree. He'll be very good here. He was out of basketball for a while. He was doing media stuff, and he comes back in for this job that's in a good conference. I'm sure it was not hard for him to move to Charleston, South Carolina. And he's at a program where they have the most resources, a great fan base, and good support at a school that doesn't have football. Like, this is their thing. He's going to have every opportunity to be successful, and I believe he's going to do that in year number 1, Rich. So give me Charleston, and I'm going to take Ante Brizovic to be player of the year. I don't want to spoil your pick. I really like yours, and I think that guy's going to be really good right away. And if you don't know who he is, you're going to find out very soon. Right. But I'm going to say Charleston, and with one of the few holdovers on this team, Ante Brizovic, as the big guy, is the anchor, he's going to be the player of the year.
Good pick, and I'll tell you why. He is I believe he's the only all-conference player in this entire conference to be returning. There may be one other. I'm not, but I know he's the only first teamer, and I think they picked 7 first teamers. And interestingly enough, we asked to speak to Coach Chris Mack as for an interview. We were turned down, and that doesn't surprise me, not so much because of who we are, but maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he's not doing a lot of interviews because he kind of wants to get on with the season and doesn't want people dragging up the past and stuff like that. As much as I like Brezovic and as much as I like their transfer, Darren Boyd, there's just so much this conference or this team, Charleston, is losing, partly because their coach, ironically, Pat Kelsey, is going to Louisville, and he took some of this team's best players with him. specifically James Scott, the big center, and Kobe Rogers, the very talented combo guard, who I believe is only a sophomore or a junior. He's in the younger side. And I think Kobe has a lot of upside. However, they were gone. So my pick is Townsend, and specifically, they return 5 of their top 6 players. And I think Tyler Kahada is a player of the year candidate in this conference. He's a 6'8" small forward, if you will. Didn't he stuffs the stat sheet, but not a huge score last year. 10 points per game, but he had solid shooting percentages of 42, 35, and 84. And he just, stuffed the stat sheet with, all around for somebody only playing 23 minutes per game. So I think he's a player of the year candidate, but not my pick. My pick is Jean Aaron Gorin, which is a mouthful to say, but he's coming from Iona, and as you know, Speedy Claxton at Hofstra is just always emphasizes a guard. He picks a guard and he builds the offense around that guard, and that guard always is averaging at least 15 points per game. So Aaron Gurin last year, he only played 22 minutes per game for Iona, but the shooting splits were awesome. 48, 40, and 80. Okay. He averaged only 8 points per game, but as I said, he only played 22 minutes per game. But he also averaged 3.9 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and 1.1 steals. So all those numbers are going to go up this year. So he's my pick based on how well he did as a freshman last year, and just Speedy Claxton tends to build his team around a guard. Any final thoughts?
I want to give a shout out to local guy D. Wilk Tavares coming from Dell State, who's going to also be playing at Charleston. Believe he'll be putting up a lot of points as well. A lot of good guards. D. Wilk Tavares, who was very good at Dell State. Darren Boyd coming in from Lipscomb. CJ Fulton's still there. Lot to like about Charleston, Rich. I'm going to stick by. I know that can be the easy pick because they've represented the team in the tournament in a pretty dominant fashion, putting up a lot of points, playing very fast, but I'm still going to stick with Charleston. But very good pick. Gene Aaron Guerin's going to be very good for Hofstra.
All right, so now we'll move on to Conference USA. Last year, we both really liked Louisiana Tech to win this conference. You picked Daniel Batcho to be player of the year. I picked Isaiah Crawford, both from the same team. Isaiah ended up winning it, and he also won Defensive Player of the Year. He's gone for Louisiana Tech. Interestingly enough, I talked to Daniel Batcho today. We'll be airing that interview in the near future. But what happened last year was Louisiana Tech, they lost out, and they were they finished second place in the regular season. Sam Houston got the top seed in the tournament, but neither team went to the NCAAs. That went to third place Western Kentucky, who went to the NCAA tournament, and they won a game, right? Yeah.
Who's that?
Western Kentucky.
They were close. They had Marquette on the ropes.
Oh, but okay, right. So I have changed my pick on this conference 3 times. 3 times. I won't say who I've settled on, but I started with Louisiana. Well, let's say I started with Louisiana Tech, then I went to Sam Houston, and then I picked a third team. So what are your thoughts on Conference USA this year? And is there any chance they get 2 bids?
I don't think they'll get 2 because it's not your father's CUSA, if you want to call it that. You remember 2 years back, we had UAB and FAU that, hey, like that FAU
Yes.
team, 2 losses coming in. Almost, if they didn't win that game, they wouldn't have got in.
Right.
So I don't think there's a
Well, that would have been a crime.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you would have had to make that, a 3. That's just how it is, though. I mean, you look at Charleston 2 years ago. They were, 30-2 or 31-3, and they could have missed it if they didn't win the CAA championship. So
Yeah.
it sucks that that's the way it is, Rich.
McNeese and Grand Canyon were also biting their fingernails last year.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how good you do in non-conference or whatever. You still got to do what you do in March and win the conference tournament. So unfortunately, I don't think that with all the realignment,
The only way you can get around that is if you knock off like a top 25 team in November or December. If you can, beat, like a Marquette or a Creighton or a Kentucky or something like that, and keep that on your resume, that might be enough to get one of these teams that win the conference, and then they go like 28-4, but if they have a Kentucky win on their resume, they might just get in anyway. But you gotta have that pairing,
yeah. But then at the same time, even if you don't go undefeated in non-conference, one loss, you lose at Louisiana Tech, and then they stick a fork in you. You lose one conference game, and if it's, God forbid, it's at home, then they really crucify
Oh
you.
yeah, they do crush you. By the way, I should mention before you begin, Kennesaw State joins this conference to give them an even 10.
Okay.
So
yeah. Realignment move is we'll probably talk much more about. Not with the Ivy League, you don't got to worry about realignment in the Ivy League, the ancient eight. They don't touch that. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think this is a conference where you're going to get the two bids. It's just going to stick to one. It's unfortunate. We can talk about NCAA expansion another time, and we'll need probably 2 episodes for it because I'll fight you on it. But I like what Western Kentucky is returning, of course. 7 guys is a bunch to be bringing back. They do lose Steve Lutz, though, Rich, and that's massive. I mean, going to the Big 12 at Oklahoma State, difficult place with all the other great teams around the Big 12, but still have the pieces in place to be very good. I'm looking at Isaiah.
They didn't really lose anybody that they're going to lose a lot of sleep over.
Right. And some guys, move on from graduation, but I do think that's big with Steve Lutz moving on. I like Louisiana Tech. I think year 2 at Sam Houston State, even though Jason Hooten's not there and he's at New Mexico State, which happens to be in this conference. I like the 3 teams at the top. Liberty with Richie McKay, always competitive as well. Here's what I'm going to do, though. I'll make it short after I ramble for a little bit. I'll take Louisiana Tech. I'll take Mr. Daniel Batcho to dominate this conference and win Player of the Year, even with a stocked cupboard, if you will, for Western Kentucky coming back. I think those 2 teams battle it out at the top, but I'll take Louisiana Tech to seemingly finally get over this hump. I feel like they've had some really good players with Isaiah Crawford and Kenneth Lofton, and even with Eric Conkle, they just never got all the way there. I'm going to take him to do it this year.
And you're going with Daniel as your Player of the Year?
Yep.
All righty. Second time's a charm. I'll tell you right now, I am also picking Daniel. In my introduction for the interview, the list was long of how many things in this league, especially metrics, he either finished first or second, at worst third. He really did dominate this conference, but unfortunately he had Isaiah Crawford on, in the same conference on the same team. So as I said, I started with Louisiana Tech, and I still like what they're bringing back. I really like the addition of Caden Cooper from Oklahoma. Daniel told me today he compares him to Isaiah Crawford. They're about the same size. He said they have similar skill sets. He is a former 4-star top 60 player that played very little at Oklahoma last year, and now he's going to be playing alongside Daniel there. Then my second pick was Sam Houston. The reason why I liked Sam Houston is just continuity. This team is not a flashy team. They hang their hats on defense, and they brought back 5 of their top 7 players, and they added Khalifa Seiko. And I don't know if you remember when we talked to the big forward for Utah State last year, you and I, drawing a blank on the name, help an old guy. Great Azabor. When we brought up Seiko, he raved about him. And this is a very athletic center, not much on offense, but on a team that loves to play defense, he's the perfect rim protector, an athletic rim protector who can run the floor. And I think that's going to make this team formidable again on the defensive side. But my pick was Western Kentucky. And as you said, they bring back 7 of their top 10 players, including Don McHenry, their leading scorer, Tyrone Marshall, who was excellent in the NCAA tournament and the conference tournament. He is a stat sheet stuffer who can play anywhere from small forward to center for you. Probably ideally a small forward or a small ball power forward. But he's got great size and can do just about anything. And they also add Blaze Keita, a center from Nebraska, who's huge, and Braxton Bayless, a combo guard from Niagara, I don't expect Bayless to be a star on this team, but I think he'll give them solid minutes. So that's my pick. I like the tandem of McHenry and Marshall, but I'll tell you what, I think the difference between Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, and Sam Houston is very, very fine. And then Liberty's my 4th pick. They're going to be, again, they'll be an excellent offensive team, but they're going to be terrible on defense. Liberty just doesn't have any size, really. Liberty's just, their one hope is a redshirt freshman from China, Kai Yu. Who's like 7'1", a big Chinese center, but nobody knows much about him. And so if he turns out to be a great player, Liberty could be a force, if they had some rim protection. But without him, I think they'll put up a lot of points, but they'll also give up a lot of points. As the saying goes, there's no time like the present. So let's roll that Daniel Batcho interview right now before we move on to another conference. Alrighty, our special guest today is Louisiana Tech center Daniel Batcho. Last year as a junior for the Bulldogs, Daniel averaged 15.2 points, 9.8 rebounds, 2.4 blocks per game while shooting 59% from the floor. He was named both first team All-CUSA and CUSA All-Defense. Daniel finished in the top 3 of the conference for field goal percentage, rebounding percentage, block percentage, offensive rating, defensive rating, player efficiency rating, win shares, and plus minus. And by the way, you led in most of those categories. You were either first and second in all of them, except for plus minus. You were third. So bonjour, Daniel. Welcome
Bonjour.
to the show. How are you doing
Yes,
today?
man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm
Yeah.
doing great. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
How about you?
So how was your summer? Did you get a chance to go home?
Nah, but home came to me. My mom, my boy, and my sister. Yes, they were here. Spent 3 weeks with me. So it was one of the best summers I've had in my life. I
Very
enjoyed it.
nice. Very nice.
It was amazing.
So they came to Louisiana?
Yes, sir. To wrestling.
And what did you just hang out, or did you go visit things?
I have practice most of the days. So I was coming with my brother in the morning. We were getting some shots up together, running together, and my mom and my sister, they were kind of like visiting, going to the lakes, going to the pool, getting to some walks in nature because they love the forest. And then we also went a little bit to New Orleans to see a kind of a big city to get some more energy too.
Right, and of city with a French background too.
Yes, sir.
So did you? I suppose you didn't get a chance then to pay much attention to the Olympics.
I did watch the Olympics a little bit. Yes, sir. I loved it. Every time there's like a big competition, international competition to see get a chance to see the best basketball players on the planet together. It's a blessing. Like seeing LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry on the same team. Like it's something that we're never gonna see again. So we gotta take the moment and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I think I only missed one game. One game of the whole tournament. That's how much I was tuned in. So, I read something interesting about you today, and you, in addition to French and English, you also speak Russian. How did that come about?
Actually, my mom and my father, they both grew up in, back then it was the URSS, but now it's called Belarus and Ukraine because all the countries kind of like split up and become their own countries.
Right.
My mom grew up in Belarus, and my mom and my father grew up in Ukraine. And then they just met in France, and I was born in France. But like growing up, all they were talking in the house was Russian, and then I would go outside and speak French and learn French with my friends and everything.
Wow.
Mhm.
How cool is that?
It's pretty cool.
Are there other I'm sure there's lots,
Mhm.
but what other interesting things, non-hoops, non-basketball things,
Mhm.
from your interesting background could you share with us?
I love being in nature, like just going by the beach or like being in the forest and just like let the moment sink in, just enjoy the environment, like the blessing that we have in our life, just the little things like that. I also love music. I love being listening to music. I even like try to like make my own beats. I just started doing that not too long ago. So yeah, the music and nature life, like that's something that I really enjoy. And learning, like just reading books, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Just to
yeah.
chill stuff.
Wow. I think
Mhm.
you and I could hang out.
Yes, that would be good.
How about any sports you do other than basketball?
Uh, I used to watch a lot of soccer growing up, but I kind of like soccer
Right.
kind of. And now I'm starting to get into football a little bit, and I love you. Yes,
American
sir.
football.
American football, yes sir, American football, and I also love UFC, watching
Ah,
UFC, the fighters, yes sir, I like that too.
okay. All right. If you like nature,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, well, it can be exasperating, but it also can be relaxing. Golf, you might want to try. Because there's some beautiful golf courses all over the world. Probably in your area, there's probably plenty.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, just a suggestion. Um, so you haven't played for the national team in France since 2018.
Yes
Is
sir.
that something you would like to do down the road?
Yeah, so that's something I think about if they contact me, see how like our schedule goes together. Like what it depends what we gotta do in the summer, but like usually in summer that's also like after the huge load that we get in the season, that's a time that I need to recover, make sure my body's right. So that's
Right,
something I definitely think about if they contact me.
right.
So
Yeah, that is a tough one.
mhm.
With the off season, a lot of times being not having much time to recover.
So
This year with the French team, there were so many good players, young players,
mhm,
that were not on this year's squad. And we think about just this draft and Victor Wembanyama, but there were a lot of other really good French players that were in recent drafts, over the last 5 years, or are going to be in upcoming drafts over the next. I don't really go that far into the future, but I know there's a good
mhm,
number of French players going to be in the next two to three drafts. Um, does it, I think to the average fan, they're kind of surprised when they see the same guys year after year. So what I'm saying is that the coaches who select the players really seem to value experience.
mhm,
And so they much rather have an experienced Nick Batum, who we know is not the Nick Batum of 10 years ago, but they'd rather still have him than have somebody really young. What do you think about that? Do you notice that? I'm just trying to get your thoughts of
mhm.
youth and upside versus experience when it comes to playing for the national team.
I feel like that this is the last Olympic. That was kind of like the end of an era. Also,
Right,
since it was also like in excuse me, since it was also in Paris. I feel like the coach and like the whole organization, they wanted like all the players that like helped the French program to get to that level, like get them the last like their farewell tour. And so after that, like I feel like it's gonna be a lot of new faces for the next like World Cup and the next Olympic game. But I understand the coach. He felt that like the Colo, Evan Fournier, Nicolas Batum, like Rudy Gobert, all those guys they helped him get here. So it wasn't like, all right, thank you for everything, guys. Now I'm gonna take everybody, every new faces, and now we're gonna play with that. So I feel like that was the right thing to do. Finish with who he started, and
right,
now I feel like the next generation gonna come up.
right. And players like DeColo,
Mhm.
came up big. I personally, what I feel it is they like the continuity of the players knowing each other.
Yes,
And I
sir.
think they give a lot of value to that. And I think
Hmm.
that's the one advantage international teams have over the US. US, the team looks
Definitely.
different every World Cup, every Olympics. The World Cup team looks nothing like the Olympic team in this, when they're only a year apart. And I think that's what gives teams like Serbia, France, and all the other great teams in the world, Germany, another one, has a lot of continuity. And I think that gives, European teams an advantage, or international teams, I should say.
No, definitely.
So moving on to your college career, you started at Arizona, you moved to Texas Tech for 2 years. I think when you were having your best season at Tech, you had some injury issues. And then you came to Louisiana Tech, and you'll be in your second season there this year. So what's that journey been like?
If somebody would have told me like before I came in America, like what it would look like, I wouldn't believe them. If they told me like, yeah, you're gonna be here in Arizona, then you're gonna be at Texas Tech, and then you're gonna go to Louisiana Tech, I'd be like, nah, I don't believe it. But like in every places that I've been at, I learn different things. Every environment, like I feel like I'm getting more and more closer to like where I'm supposed to be. Like God don't make no mistake, and I'm just getting closer to like where my journey is coming me. Like I love nature. I love like little towns where I can like just would be peaceful. So I feel like finding myself in Western is just like exactly where I need to be. And I just like also like Coach Esther and like Coach G-Mac, Coach Kevin Gilder, and Tyson Baptist. That's all coaches that I met at Texas Tech. So like I feel like it was meeting them at Texas Tech. If I don't meet them at Texas Tech, I don't come here. So I feel like it was all a part of the journey.
Right. Last season, you had your best season so far in your college career. Coming to Arizona, I thought you were going to be similar to one of my favorite college players of all time, Killian Tilly, who you may know. Do you know Killian?
Yes, sir.
And I thought but you've turned out to be more, at least so far, more of a traditional old school type of center. What's the next phase of your personal development as a basketball player?
Yeah, my next phase is like keep on getting better where I'm at, but also adding like some stretch, shooting some three-pointers, shooting mid-range, and just being more comfortable with the ball, facing up the basket more, attacking up the dribble. That's the two main things I'm focused on right now. This and shooting the two-point line, and of course like keep on getting more and more athletic, running the floor, being able to like outrun everybody, jump higher, and other things.
Right. If you get that jump shot, you could be a Killian, a more defensive version of Killian. So, last season, the Bulldogs finished just one game behind Sam Houston in the regular season and the CUSA standings, but you both got knocked out, and Western Kentucky was the team that got the NCAA bid. And of course, your team featured not only the player of the year in the conference, but the defensive player of the year in the conference, and Isaiah Crawford, who has moved on to the NBA. It's going to be challenging to replace that production, no?
Yes, sir. It's gonna be challenging, but we got a lot of new guys too. I'm thinking about KJ Cooper. I'm thinking about Will Jeffers. More from I miss a lot of guys from like high major, a lot of transfers. So I know that like we ain't gonna miss a bit. We're gonna be all right. Those guys coming hungry, trying to prove something. That like they ain't gonna come down the level to like chill. They coming down the level to like get better, and like they're starving. Everybody hungry.
Right. The most heralded newcomer you mentioned is Caden Cooper, a former 4-star, top 60 recruit. Didn't get much of an opportunity, with Oklahoma last season, so he's still just a sophomore. How is Caden fitting in? And what other players do you think are going to make a big impact this year as you move past the Isaiah Crawford, era?
Now, like I said, like KJ is somebody that like reminds me a lot of Isaiah Crawford too. Like same type of build, like long, strong 3-and-D type of player that can dribble the ball, create his own shot. Then we are also Will Jeffers, that's kind of the same build too, but like even like hungrier and a bit taller too, with kind of older, with more experience. And we have more Amari Abram, the left point guard. Really like he has he's a natural born scorer. He can score like he makes it look so easy. I think he's gonna be a great impact for us. And we also have a good freshmen too coming in. and AJ Bates and the London blocker. That's gonna be really good.
Right.
And then we still have Al Green. Al Green is a great shooter, really smart guy. I think he's gonna help us a lot too.
Like, is Blocker related? Does he have an older brother that's went to Arkansas? And
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about
okay,
that.
because there was a blocker that just played was a freshman at Arkansas last year. But just curious. I know both of those incoming guys are 3 stars, top 300 guys. So looking over CUSA, the 4 best teams from last season, at least in my opinion, and by the conference standings, really, you know, your team, Western Kentucky, Sam Houston, and Liberty, I would put in there. You know, they weren't great on the defensive end, but they certainly could score. You know, do you guys talk much about your upcoming conference opponents? Do you focus on like who's going to be good this year and who's going to be, you know, maybe, you know, who are your biggest challenges this coming year? Do you talk about that?
I'm sure we are going to do that soon with the coaches too and everybody. But so far, the main focus has just been us and finding our identity, just making the fundamentals stick in everybody's head. Just make sure that everybody knows this is a defensive program, and just grow up every day and making sure like we get comfortable with each other. But so far now, we haven't really like talked about other things like that. We've just been focused on ourselves.
Okay.
So,
And you seem pretty confident about this year's version of the Bulldogs. I
so,
mean, last year, if you don't lose to Middle Tennessee, you might be playing in March Madness.
so,
And they should be pretty good, by the way, this year too. So what do you think is going to be the difference this year to get you over the hump to get to March Madness?
I think it's really like consistency and like the little details. Because like even I don't know if you heard that stat, but like last year we were the only team in the nation that hasn't lost one game by 10 points or more. 10 points or more. Like yeah,
Right.
we're the only team in the season in the whole NCAA that only lost games by like 1 point, 3 points, 7 points, 9 points, 9 points, 8 points. We never lost a game by like 10 or plus. So it really shows that like our teams, like it's not like a level difference or like nothing too crazy. It's just one offensive rebound on the future line, or like a few features that we missed, or like somebody that didn't come back in defense and like tell the guy, oh yeah, that's your guy, take him. Just the little things. It's like nothing big really that we're missing right now. So it's really the little detail and the consistency to make sure like we're gonna step to the next level.
Okay. You know, usually, and usually, experience plays. I think I've noticed. You know, I've been talking to a lot of mid-major, you know, guys from mid-major teams, and a lot of them were in your situation. They were one of the best teams last year, but they didn't make it to the next level. And what I noticed was is they were often upset by teams that had a lot of seniors and experience. But you know, another thing I noticed about your club was usually one of the questions I look for is I'll say, okay, you guys did this well, did this well, did this well, but you didn't do this well. And I couldn't find really a statistic to say you guys didn't really do this well. You were really at the top of the conference in everything that was important. So I hope that continues for you guys.
Appreciate
So lastly, I want to. I know you want to focus on this season, but you are a senior, and you must have given some thought to what's next. And
it.
international players seem to have some more options than American prospects. For example, Oscar da Silva started playing in Germany right after he finished at Stanford. He didn't even go through the draft process. He just started playing, you know, professionally in Germany. So it's have you given some thought to what the plan is for this season?
Yes, definitely. Like since I was a young kid, 10 years old, I dream about playing in NBA. And as soon as the season is gonna be over, it's something that I'm gonna try to do is play in the NBA. I haven't really like thought about playing overseas or like any other countries. I'm really just focusing on the NBA. And if something happens and I got to go play somewhere else, I do what I gotta do. But I'm really focusing on the NBA.
Okay.
So
And I know, when before you came over, you actually played some in Eastern Europe, like in Serbia. You played in the Belgrade League, and in that area. I suppose the Adriatic League would be another option for you. Yes.
it's
Now I know that's not your dream, but
Mhm.
I was just thinking that that would be another option. So have any? I don't even know if they're allowed to, but I think in this day and age they probably are. Have any international teams say, hey, have they reached out to you already and said, hey, if
no,
you
nobody reached out yet. Nobody reached out
Right.
yet.
Okay. All right. Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I
Appreciate
wish you and the team the best. It looks like you're going to have another good squad, and I hope you come back and visit when you're going through the draft process, and
But
you can check in with us then and let us know how things are going.
appreciate you, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Good luck for everything. Bye.
All right, so now we'll move on to the Ivy, and this is a conference Jake and I cover regularly. I'm down at Princeton a lot. We both did you make it to the Ivy? You didn't make it to the Ivy Madness this year, did you?
I did not know. Saturday was still.
You were still at the Big East.
It was still Big East.
Yeah.
It was still A10 as well with Joe's and wait a minute. Yeah, I think Friday was the off day, and then Joe's played VCU. They made the semis, so I was there Saturday.
Okay.
I was at Big East Championship Saturday.
At night,
and
right.
When Temple went on their run, me and my buddy said, hey, let's go back down to Philly and watch the game with our friends. And then that,
yeah,
my hopes for Ivy Madness went away there.
Well, I was hurting so bad, for my back that I could have gone back. I took Friday off. And I wasn't really much better on Saturday. But the nice thing about the Ivy was it started in the morning and it was going to be over by late afternoon. And so I just had my wife drive right straight down to Columbia's campus because we're only 50, 60 miles away. And she picked, as soon as the game was over, I called her, said, I'm done. Or I actually did that before I went to the press conference. And I went to the press conference and I said, I'm done. And I had to wait maybe 20 minutes and she was there and off I went. If I would have had to stay for the Big East, I would have been there another night,
Mhm.
So, so I did get to see Ivy Madness. But I think personally, I won't go into great detail. I'll let you run with it. But my personal opinion is the top 4 teams from last year are going to be the top 4 teams this year, even though a lot of them lost some really, really good. Actually, all of them pretty much lost some really good players.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Penn and Columbia with whole lot of words to say here. Geronimo Rubia de la Rosa, one of the best players in this conference, coming back. Look, they had a shot. They were playing well for a little bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, did not make it to the conference tournament on their home floor. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like with the 4 teams that did make the tournament last year. You look at Princeton. Matalacco, great tone setter, a lot of energy, floor general, great defender. He goes to Notre Dame.
Intense and intelligent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, all that and then some. He goes to Notre Dame. Zach Martini, same deal, going to Rutgers just because you can't use your grad year in the Ivy League. So a lot of these guys have no choice but to go. So they both move on, but there's still a lot here to like. There is. Cade Pierce, excuse me, Rich. Excuse me, apologies.
His mother calls him Caden when she's mad at him.
Well, I won't do that then. I'm not his mother. But a double machine. His freshman year, he put up a double against Penn. I think every time. I think all 3 times he played him, he put up a double. This dude is something serious.
Returning player of the year.
Just has a knack for where the ball is. It's crazy. I don't want to say it's Rodman like, but it just seems like he's got a magnet in him on the ball. I mean, he's a terrific defender. Can step out and shoot the 3. Good athlete as well. Good vertical athlete.
Did you know he played point guard in high school?
Well, did he have a growth spurt, or was that always that way?
I know he had not a huge growth spurt, but he had some. But he said really the way the team was structured, it was so big that everybody was big on the team, and he was basically the guy who handled the ball the most.
Yeah, it's almost like you can see that a little bit. Just smart, a lot of tools, a lot of really good stuff. Excuse me, to like with him. And then that's not even talking about Xavier Lee. People were talking about being an NBA prospect for a long time.
Yeah. A lot of NBA people came to see him last year. Not so much Cade, but they came to see Lee.
Yeah. And I believe he went through the process and then took his name out and decided to return to school, or at least to G League or something like that. But you're talking about, Rich, two of the best players in this conference coming back.
No, I think they are the two best players in this conference.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And then Blake Peters, a really good 3-point shooter, and then Dalen Davis, who played in spurts, obviously with Alaco being in front of him. But I think he's in a situation with a lot of good players around him that Dalen Davis can step in here and really help this team stay at the top and stay at number one in this conference. You look at Cornell, even with the losses player-wise, but also with Brian Earl leaving, bring back Nazir Williams, bring back Guy Ragland. Like there's a lot to like with them as well. And I think under John Jacques or Jaquez, I don't know if it's silent at the end of his name, but he's an Earl guy and he played there. So I think he's going to do fine at Cornell. Yale loses a lot, but again, their two best players coming back are very good. You have the best defensive player in this conference in Bez Mbeng, who every night will guard the best player and probably do a pretty damn good job on him, Rich, and do his best to really take guys out of games. And then I remember when Yale came to Penn.
I think if he has a jump shot, that's the only thing really missing from his game. He could be a pro prospect.
Yeah. I mean, he's already like an NBA level defender. I mean, that guy gets the toughest assignment every night and he delivers. Yeah. When they came to Penn, he made life tough on Clark Slackert coming back from his injury. But I remember watching warm-ups. Talk about another guy here. I was watching warm-ups. I was like, I worked there. I helped the basketball team set up for that game, set up the locker room for him. And I was out there so early. Nobody was really in the gym except the players, maybe some media people and some staff. And I was just watching warm-ups. And watching John Pulakita shoot, I mean, he's got a beautiful jump shot. Rotation on the ball. I mean, shooting off of movement, shooting where he doesn't even have to follow through, like deep range. I mean, he really has a pretty. I just sat there and just watched him shoot for a little bit, Rich.
And he personally crushed Auburn in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I think he made something like 7 threes in that game. And now we got to mention, though, when we're talking about Yale, Danny Wolf, who was right there in the running for Player of the Year, has moved on to Michigan, and that's a big loss.
And absolutely, and so is Matt Nowling because Nick Townsend is, not a vertical athlete and doesn't have the size and the skill that Danny Wolf has. He's just like a sack of flour. You know what I mean? He's just a sturdy guy in the post who's going to not give up any ground, make it tough for you to back him down in the post. So they're losing a lot of size, and I think that's certainly a concern because then I'm going to move on to Brown. And although they lost some guys, and Kimo Ferrari going to, I believe he's a California guy going back home to San Diego State, quick little twitchy guy, they bring back their two best players. And Keno Lilly's a bucket. He'll probably be the leading scorer in this conference if it's not Xavier Lee or Pulakitas. And then they also bring back Nana Owusu-Anane, who's one of the best rebounders in this conference, who's going to give a team like Yale fits if they don't have the size to go up against them.
Yeah, and he can do it. He's one of those guys who can do a little bit of everything. And if you don't know by now, you probably do. I love guys who can do a little bit of everything.
Yep. They have to be versatile. So they have guys like AJ Lesbert and Aaron Cooley who have played a lot for them in the past coming back. But bottom line with Brown is their two best players are coming back and their two biggest producers, and they're going to have to really carry this team to get them there. And last year they did, as we both predicted, Rich. We both had them as the fourth team in. So I'll touch on Penn a little bit. My Penn Quakers, so I don't work there anymore, but still go to a lot of games, have a lot of good relationships with a lot of people there. They're losing a bunch. Andrew Laskowski, I'm not sure if he is going to be playing anywhere next year, but Clark Slackert leaves for USC. Again, the Ivy League eligibility rule. Tyler Perkins, after he had 22 points against Villanova at the Palestra and they stormed the court, Villanova said, hey, we need that guy. And they got him. He leaves. But there's a lot to like. Nick Spinoza, one of the best passing centers, that is the ultimate fulcrum for Steve Donahue's offense.
Mhm.
Great post passer. Lefty comes back. Sam Brown, who
Now,
had some injury
if I
issues
could
last
say,
year.
Spinoza, another one. If he had a jump shot, he'd have pros looking at him, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's only 6'9", so he's not
Yeah.
like a legit 7-footer.
Right, but with a jump shot, you can play the 4.
Yeah, jump shot and some free throw shooting would be big. But I
Yes.
mean, literally one of the best passers. He throws behind the back passes, skip passes with off ball screens and flares on the weak side. Like, you're literally not going to find one of these passing bigs better in college basketball than Nick Spinoza. Sam Brown, I think, is a guy who's set up for a breakout year, who's going to assume the starting point guard role, very likely, with Clark Slackert leaving. Son of Brett Brown, former Sixers coach,
Right?
who I've seen around the Palestra a couple times. This dude is I called him the Jimmer of the Ivy League to a friend last year because, man, he's got some serious range. And he had some good offensive outputs when he was healthy and could get reps and consistently be out there. He really showed a lot of good stuff. And then they bring guys like Ed Holland, a utility guy who's got length, some athleticism, can defend. George Smith, a good three-point shooter. Reese McMullen, a defender. Cam Thrower, another shooter. These guys step into bigger roles. But I want to touch on one guy coming in, Rich. One of the best players in this conference and potentially Penn's best player this year, dare I say that, is going to be Ethan Roberts coming in from Drake. He sat out last year, the year before, was the Patriot League Player of the Year at Army. This guy can straight up fill it up from three. And I think he's going to be a big-time three-point shooter in Steve Donahue's half-court system and put up a lot of points. So I think Penn is going to have a very much fighting chance to get in this top 4 and make the tournament. And I think that Penn is going to have a deeper team than a Brown, and that's what Steve Donahue's done, put a lot of bodies at you and filter a lot of guys in. And I think Penn's actually going to sneak in here. As good as Brown is, but these two guys coming back, I think this is a deeper team that still has a lot to like, and I think some guys will make a jump. I'm going to take Princeton to win it, and I'm going to take Xavier Lee, Rich, to be the player of the year and put up a whole lot of points. I want to take Caden Pierce because I love his game, and he's a terrific player. But Xavier Lee is going to show people why he can be a pro if he didn't last year, and he's going to put up a ton of points again. And with Matalako being out, maybe a guy that's got to play the point as well as Dalen Davis, I think you're going to see a lot from Xavier Lee. I'll take Princeton and the great Mitch Henderson to get to the tournament, win the Ivy League tournament, but I'm going to go Xavier Lee, Rich.
All right. Couple other notes before I make my pick. We didn't mention Harvard, but they do bring in the top freshman in this class, a top 100 guy. Tommy Amaker always seems to get a top 100 guy. He got Robert Hinton this year, will be playing for Harvard, so he's a player to watch for sure. Princeton had the second best freshman coming in Malik it's not Abdullahi, I believe. And he's a small forward. He's a top 200 guy. And I too am picking Princeton. I thought Dalen Davis at times was a better option, for example, than Jake Scott or Blake Peters. I just thought there were certain games. I saw them play Yale. I saw them play Brown. I think I saw them a third time in person. But my feeling was that there were times when Scott and Peters just weren't coming up, and Davis always seemed to provide a spark. So I like him moving into the starting lineup. They certainly will miss Matt Alako, but I think they have the two best players in the conference on the team. So I am picking Princeton, and I'm going to go with the reigning MVP in Cade Pierce. All right. So we will move on now to the Missouri Valley Conference, another conference that was just totally gutted by the high major teams or graduation, take your pick, but mostly more gutted. For example, Indiana State, who should have been in the tournament last year, could have run it back with like their top 5 players. And they're all excellent players. And all of them are gone. Drake could have run it back with most of their players. their coach is now at West Virginia, and he took a lot of those, or some of those guys with him. Plus, they were hit by graduation, other transfers, and Belmont didn't have a great year last year, but they had three of the best players in the conference, and all of them were sophomores. And that was Malik Dia. He's gone to Ole Miss. Jacob Gillespie, who's gone to Maryland, and Cade Tyson, who's gone on to North Carolina. They could have run it all back. So you're looking at three potential, I think, top 25 teams, top 40 teams for sure, that could have been in this conference. But because of all the transfers, none of them are probably going to be overly relevant this year. So having said that, Jake, who do we like in this conference?
Yeah, hey, I think Murray State and Bradley, big Brian Wardle fan, man. And I know that Malachi Leon's moved on. Connor Hickman went to Cincinnati, but Darius Hannah comes back, and Duke Dean as well, the point guard. I think there's a lot to like with Bradley, and I'm a big Brian Wardle fan. But man, Murray State, Steve Prohm, Adden Quick. Look at all the transfers that they brought in. They get Kyron Lindsay from Texas Tech, as well as a couple other guys, and some returners, not to mention. So I think it's a two-team race here. I think there's a lot of really, like, UNI, Ben Jacobson always does a good job. Southern Illinois with, I believe it's Scott Nagy coming from Wright State to go there. Another guy with some pedigree. Like, there's definitely some good teams at the top here. But
yeah, it is Nagy replacing Mullins.
Yeah. I'm going to roll with Murray State, and I'll go with the returning point guard, Jacoby Wood, to get player of the year. But really like Duke Dean, really like Bradley. I think those two teams are going to be the top here, but I'll roll with Murray State with a transfer class coming in and with some guys that play good minutes there coming back.
Right. One note from the bottom. I don't think Valpo, who's been kind of like languishing since they've come over from the Ohio Valley, or Horizon, or both. Maybe did they go Horizon, Ohio Valley to Missouri Valley? But anyway, they've been languishing in the basement. I think they get out of the basement this year and may finish ahead of Belmont, Indiana State, and Drake, the three best teams in this conference last year. Watch their sophomore forward, Cooper Schweiger. He's a player to watch. I like how you broke down the top of this conference. Northern Iowa, they did lose Nate. Is it Hase or Heiss?
I think it's Heisey.
Heisey? All right. He's going on to Iowa State. He was a great shooter, great wing. He's moving on to Iowa State. But they do bring back Titan Anderson, Trey Campbell, two players I really like. Titan Anderson is like a 6'4" guard who averages like 8 rebounds a game. And they bring in Lee Bond, a former top 100 guy from Virginia who didn't get a lot of playing time for Virginia. Tony, I'm drawing a blank. I can see his face.
Tony Bennett.
Tony Bennett doesn't like to play freshmen or sophomores for that matter much, and Lee Bond kind of languished on the bench, but I think he's going to be one of the better players in this conference. I like Bradley. They didn't lose too much. Malve Leons was probably their best pro prospect. He's gone on to the pros. Connor Hickman moved on to Cincinnati. But I still like, they bring back 4 of their top 6 players, including the guys you mentioned, Dean and Hannah. But the team I like is Murray State. Jacoby Wood I think is going to be the player of the year in this conference. He can not only score, play defense, but he can also, play make. So I think he's the kind of guy who could give you 15 and 5 every night. So they also, their recruiting class includes Kylan Milton from Arkansas Pine Bluff, who was just a amazing stat sheet stuffer there. I think he too is a player of the year candidate, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Jordan McCullum, a forward, is the top freshman in this conference. Yeah, he is at number 168, so he might get some playing time. He's two of they also have a power forward, Qian Ring, coming in. So that's 2 top 300 guys, one of them a top 200 guy. So I just with the players that are coming back, with the nice recruiting class from the portal coming in, plus the nice recruiting class of freshmen, I think Murray State's definitely going to have the most depth in a conference that doesn't really have a clear cut, number one player, a player of the year candidate. By the way, who are you going with as your player of the year candidate?
I went Jacoby Wood.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're in total agreement there. So now we'll move on to the SoCon, or the Southern Conference. Last year, Samford not only was the regular season champ by far, but also won the conference tournament and then nearly beat Kansas in the first round of the NCAAs. In fact, they were robbed in that game by the referees that basically cost them the game. Player of the year in this conference was Vontarius Woolbright of Western Carolina, who's moved on to the pro ranks. This conference, Wolford brings back a ton. Samford is in total rebuild mode. East Tennessee is somewhere in between. Same with Chattanooga. I think Furman also is a team Furman brings back a fair amount of players, but their best players from last year have moved on.
Yeah, so Wofford bringing back a ton. Wofford's got a stocked fridge here. I think ETSU is interesting. John Bugg's a good player at North Texas, and then the big fella Roosevelt Wheeler, who never really got to show anything at Louisville or VCU, being there. So here's the thing, man. I know Samford lost a lot. I'm pilled on Buckyball, man. I am. I love that Rylan Jones is coming back, who's I think is his 6th year.
Yeah.
So you have a dude who knows how to play, who's going to shoot the three well, who's going to run the offense.
And I believe he was a former 4-star with Utah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, hey, Colin Holloway's he was a good player on a really bad Georgetown team. And he was a good player at Tulane as well. I think he's going to fit in and be a nice pickup here. Even with all that they're losing, man, I'm just pilled on Samford. I am, dude. I'm in love with Buckyball, man, and the way they play. So give me Samford. Give me Rylan Jones in his 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever the hell year it is for him, Rich. I'm going to roll with them. I don't care how many people they lost. I'll live and die with Buckyball and live and die with the 3 right with them.
Yeah, I think Holloway is an outside shot at player of the year in this conference.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jaden Brownwell. Didn't play a lot at Illinois, Chicago, but when he did, he was efficient. Trey Ford, we saw him last year with Mississippi State. We know he can fill it up. And Larry Olakinka, if I'm saying that right, Ole Inca. I've actually never seen him play, but the stats tell me that this guy in limited minutes almost blocked 2 shots per game. So they have a rim protector along with Riley Alsbach, who's more of a stretch 5, who I was impressed with last year in limited minutes on a very good, Samford team. Just to make note of where their guys have gone. Ancora Core has moved on to Kansas State. AJ Staten McCray has moved on to Miami, Florida. Jermaine Marshall graduated, and so did Jaden Campbell. And I really like Jaden Campbell. I thought for sure he'd hook on with a G League team. He still might. There's still plenty of time, but he didn't make it to Summer League, which disappointed me. I really was impressed with Jaden Campbell last year. But the team I'm picking is Wolford. And why? They have lost no one of significance. They bring back their top 6 players. I really like Wolford's backcourt of Chase Cormier and Corey Tripp. And Cormier is a player who really interests me. 6'2", started at Northeastern as a freshman. Last year at Wolford, played about 20 minutes per game, but his shooting splits were out of this world. 48% from the field, 50% from 3 on 3.5 attempts per game and only 20 minutes per game. And then 91% from the free throw line. I think that he will end up being the team's starting point guard. Though there's a number of candidates for that job, actually. But yeah, it just intrigues me. Someone at his young age with such great shooting potential, and he could put up huge numbers playing if he plays, closer to 30 minutes a game instead of 20. So to wrap up the SoCon, I think you like Samford, and I get that. I like Wolford, and I think it's going to be close. I really do. Player of the year, who are you going with?
Sanford and Ryland Jones, baby. I'll be on the buckyball train till the wheels come off. I'm going down with the ship if that's what it takes.
All right, that makes sense to me. I definitely think he's one of the top candidates in this conference. The two teams below Sanford and Wolford are East Tennessee and Chattanooga, and I'm going to pick my player of the year from those teams, and I'm going to go with Chattanooga's Trey Bonham. He really had an outstanding year. This is, of course, his third school. Started at VMI, then played at Florida, and now at Chattanooga. And last year at Chattanooga, he put up 16 points per game. He shot 48 from the floor, 41 from deep, 84 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds a game, 3.6 assists, 1.8 steals. Stat sheet stuffer. I think he's a great candidate, and that's my pick. All right. So we shall move on now to the Southland. And I think we're probably going to likely agree that this is a one-horse race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stephen F. Austin can be competitive as they boomerang back to the Southland.
Right.
After a short stint in the WAC, they're back home. Where they were really good under Brad Underwood and won the back-to-back tournament games and made another, given Texas Tech and Chris Beard's team a run for their money before they made the Final Four in the championship game. Or excuse me, I think there was the Elite Eight that year, and they lost to Villanova in the Elite Eight. But anyway, that's besides the point. My Lord, Rich, this McNeese State team is loaded. They could compete. Could this be like a not last place team in like the SEC or something? Do you think that this team is that good?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this team
I think it's a top. I think it's potentially a top 25 team.
The talent rich for this conference is like nothing you've ever seen before. My Lord, this team is loaded in Will Wade's second year. They bring back Christian Shoemate, a pogo stick. They bring back DJ Richards, bring back Javon Garcia, and look at everybody they're bringing in, Rich. Some more size, because that was a knock on them. They played against Graham Mike, who was red hot in the tournament. They didn't have a big body, a big, 6'11", 7-foot guy to go up against him. And that Gonzaga team was red hot, and they blew him out. But my Lord, Rich, Quadir Copeland, who I think is, I'll spoil it, he's my player of the year in this conference. I believe he's going to be the point guard right away. And he's big, he's long. It's a great, great addition here. And then Sincere Parker, who I watched him at LaSalle, I think put up 33. And it's a shame he just was injured so much because this dude was putting up numbers and could put it in the bucket when he was out there, Rich.
Unbelievable.
Yes, terrific score. Joe Charles put up numbers at Louisiana. Brandon Murray, you want to talk about the athleticism on this team now, Rich.
Yeah.
Quadir Copeland and CJ Shoemate, who's a pogo stick, and Brandon Murray, who's a really good vertical athlete on the perimeter. There's more high major experience here. There's more scoring. There's numbers. There's, athleticism. There's everything you would want in a transfer class. Jerome Brewer lit up St. Joe's, who I believe is a Jersey guy as well. When Commerce went up there to Hawk Hill and beat him, there's so much to like. I think also Bryant Celebong is coming in from a JUCO year who was at Tulsa and then also Arizona State. So there's so much talent. They're going to be deep. I mean, Will Wade's going to have everything at his disposal here. There's no reason that this team should run away with this, although Stephen F. Austin with Chris Johnson from Texas coming in, who I think is going to put up a lot of points and be a really good player. This is legitimately one of the best teams in America, Rich, let alone just a Southland team. The talent's unbelievable. They're going to run away with it, and I think Will Wade's out for blood this year, and they're going to get one or two teams in the tournament. This is a potential second weekend team, Rich. Better than they were last year. Now that Will Wade's got a year under his belt there, you saw how good they were with bringing guys in. If you want to transfer down and play here, you have proof of concept with Shahade Wells and proof of concept with the returning guys. So a terrific team with size, length, high major experience scoring. This team's going to be terrific, Rich.
Yep. I agree, Steve. And F. Austin, who comes in, also is going to probably be the biggest competitor. Rio Grande Valley also moves in, but they were pretty bad last year in the WAC, so I don't expect a lot from them. I think Nicholls State and Texas A&M Corpus Christi will be in the upper half of this conference, and I think each of those teams that I mentioned, Nicholls, Stephen F. Austin, Corpus Christi, all have maybe like one player of the year candidate. I think McNeese has 5.
Mm-hmm.
5.
Yep.
Shoemate, Copeland, Parker, Charles, and Richards. And the only thing that will probably stop Richards from being like maybe an all-conference player will be Parker. And if Parker falters, then Richards will thrive, but they're both shooters. They're both really good shooters. And Garcia is a really, really good player. I mean, this team was so good last year that Mike Saunders, who used to be the point guard for Cincinnati, really barely saw much court time. He was a backup and probably will be this year. If Copeland does take over as the point guard, then Saunders and Omar Cooper are going to be fighting for minutes as the backup point guard. I just want to tell you before we leave, and we're both riding with McNeese as the team to beat here. But before we make our player of the year picks, I want to tell you some sincere Parker numbers. Last year with St. Louis, he only played 16 games because of injury. But in those 16 games, he averaged 16 points per game, playing only 21 minutes per game. That means he almost averaged a point a minute. But it gets better. Unless this is a typo, and it certainly looks like a typo, but apparently as a sophomore at the JUCO school, Moberly, he only played 13 minutes per game. Guess how many points he averaged?
25.
22.
Okay, it was close.
22 points in 13 minutes. That's insane.
However, I think he could be one of like the leading scorers in the country. I just think the thing that might hold him back is there's so much talent around him.
Yeah, right. I agree. However, because I see McNeese having so many guys that could potentially cancel each other out for player of the year, I'm going to go with Rio Grande Valley, who I expect to be toward the bottom of the conference, but they have a player, a 6'8" point forward, if you will, named Hassan Abdul Hakim. Definitely a pro prospect. And last year was his first year in Division I, and it was cut short due to injury. But in the 19 games that he played, 29 minutes per game, he put up 13 points. His shooting splits were 49, 36, 64. So he's not a great shooter, but he's a decent shooter. But he also threw in 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.8 blocks per game. This guy's a stat sheet stuffer. If he can continue to do so, I think pro prospects are going to start to take notice of him. Who's your player of the year pick?
I got Quadir Copeland coming in. I think he's going to have a huge year for them. After not having a role this big at Syracuse, I think he's going to explode and be in the point guard as well, having the ball in his hands a lot with a really good team around him. I think you could pick a couple guys from McNeese, but I'll go Quadir Copeland coming in from Syracuse. Philadelphia's very own too.
Right. And I think he is the most talented player in this conference, Copeland, that is. I think he's the best pro prospect in this conference, but we already talked about it. So many other guys could steal some of the limelight. So I picked somebody where there's no chance of any limelight being stolen. All right. But he's going to be on a bad team. So it's probably a long shot that Abdul Hakim does win it. But I just wanted to get him in the show, I suppose. Okay, before we move on to the Sun Belt Conference, we're going to roll an interview I recently did with Myles Rigsby, guard from Troy State, who is the reigning Rookie of the Year in the conference. Our special guest today is Troy 6'6" guard Myles Rigsby, the Sun Belt Conference reigning Rookie of the Year. Last season as a freshman with the Trojans, Myles averaged 11.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 1.6 steals per game, while shooting 44% from the floor, 41% from deep, and 82% from the free throw line. Myles, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Feeling great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's pleasure. Though I'm not much of a morning person, I must admit. It's a little earlier where you are. I'm in Jersey. You're in Bama, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I got to tell you a story. Last week I interviewed Kamani Hamilton of High Point. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it was in the morning, and I had breakfast right before the interview. And then when I'm editing the interview, I realized I had a piece of scrambled egg in my beard for the whole interview. So when we put that on YouTube, we're going to have to blur me out. You know how like
Yeah.
you...
Definitely.
All right. So great having you on the show. How was your summer?
My summer's pretty good. Just a lot of hard work.
Working on your game or working on school or both?
A little bit of both. We take summer classes throughout the summer, and then we had all our guys here early in the summer, so we was just doing workouts every day.
No vacation, no break.
We right back to it as soon as
Nice. I mean, that's good for basketball. Maybe not so much for your mental health, but
personally.
your older brother Marcus is on the team. He's 1 or 2 years older than you, too, right?
Yeah, you can say 2. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you guys inseparable?
Yeah, that's my twin. I call him my twin. That's the other me.
Okay, cool. Where are you guys similar and where are you different?
The similarities, well, we just think alike. Like we could be sitting down, and we'll both want the same food, and then I guess the differences is like the style, like the dressing. Like he likes vintage old stuff. Like I'm more yeah.
He's old school, and
Yeah,
you're
old school.
And you're flashier?
Yeah, you can say that.
Is your family able to see you two play often?
Yeah, but with work, it kind of juggles here and there.
Right. And they're in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so not too far away, but
yeah.
Then again, Texas is a huge state, so all right. So last season, you shot the ball well from 3 and from the foul line. You didn't take a ton of threes, but you got to the line often. You were very good in both spot up and pick and roll situations. But again, you didn't do either on super high volume. On the other side of the ball, I would say you were an impact defender and you ranked 5th in the conference for steal percentage. How would you describe your game? Because some people list you as a guard. Some people list you as a combo guard. I noticed on 247, your freshman page, your high school page says you're a combo guard. And then your school lists you as a forward. So how would you describe your game?
I like to consider myself a combo guard. I feel like just this summer I've been working on just getting my shot more consistent from 3 and from mid range. Just showing everybody in this upcoming season, just showing everybody what I can do. I feel like I'm able to post the smaller guards and bring the bigger defenders out and take them to the hole. So just making sure I display that.
Right. Did you play at the point in high school?
I did a little bit, but it wasn't like just every game.
Right. Okay. What are some of the most important things you learned from last season? I mean, sometimes freshmen, when they have a season like yours, they kind of think that, wow, I'm here, I made it, and then they have a sophomore season that's kind of a letdown. What did you learn from last season?
Just how hard you have to work to win. I feel like coming out of high school, like my young mindset wasn't used to winning. So when I got to Troy, it was just mainly just what can you do to help us win. So from learning from that from last year and taking it in this year, I feel like I'm gonna be a better teammate.
Okay. you talked about last season and winning. You guys were 20-12 overall, and you finished third in the Sun Belt, and trailing only Appalachian State and James Madison. And I think, on the show, during the season, we're always talking about who's going to get into the March Madness and who's not. And, I think the Sun Belt was one of those conferences we thought had a chance, especially if James Madison lost in the tournament, had a chance to maybe get 2 teams in.
Yeah.
But as it was, James Madison, won it all. And you guys finished third in the regular season. However, this season, 8 of your top 10 players in minutes per game come back. And the big loss, of course, was Christian Eugene. He was your leading scorer and your leading assist man. He's gone on to the pros. Who do you expect this season to pick up the slack in terms of scoring and playmaking?
I wouldn't just give that to a designated person. I feel like my whole team is capable of scoring the ball. But we do have some guys that didn't get the chance to display what they can do last year coming in, with the little season to them. So we have a couple guys that's able to exchange what they brought to the table.
Okay. So personally, where do you expect to improve this season, and do you expect your role to change?
Yes, sir. I feel like I'm gonna take on a bigger role. I'm just making sure I can do everything for the team to make sure that we win. And you said about the scoring part.
Well, no, I said, where do you expect to improve? Like certain aspects of your game, did you specifically work on something in the off season? And did you think your role was going to change? Like, would you handle the ball more this season, or maybe be spotting up more this season? Who knows? So two different questions. One is, do you expect to be better at this and this? And do you expect your role to be different?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I feel like the ball is going to be in my hand a little more. I'm coming off ball screens, able to create for my teammates. That's another big thing too. Like I feel like last year I didn't have a lot of assists. I would feel like wasn't a great teammate to get my guys open. So this year, this summer has been my main focus, is being able to get everybody involved.
Okay. By the way, I was reviewing your stats on Synergy just before I hopped on. You were at the 86th percentile for pick and rolls handling, including passes. So they track, if you make a pass and if you get an assist, if you make a pass and somebody takes a shot, they track that, how successful you were. So 86 percentile is excellent, but as you said, low volume. Something where you definitely have potential. How about your mid-range game? That's an area where you didn't take many like long mid-range shots, and you seem to struggle, in the shorter mid-range shots. Have you worked on that coming off the pick and roll? It's pretty valuable to be able to pull up on a dime.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, definitely. That's another thing too, just incorporating that into my game, making sure that I'm able to keep handling the ball while a defender is trailing me and just be able to stop on a dime and shoot. Yeah, that's a big thing I've been working on this summer as well.
Good. So of the new guys, you mentioned players you thought could step up as a group to replace Christian's production. But of the new guys on the team, or maybe the guys who didn't play a ton last season, like you were second, I believe, in the team in minutes played behind Eugene. So of the guys who didn't play a ton last year, or the new guys on the team, I think you have 3 or 4 freshmen coming in.
3 or 4, yes, sir. 3 out of 3.
Yeah. So is there one particular person who stood out during summer practices that you think is going to have a big impact this year?
Yeah, I feel like Cooper Campbell. He's a good young guard that came in. We also have my brother, of course. He didn't get a chance to display everything that he could do last year, but he's been great in practices during the summer. So those are the two to stand out.
Now he's a little shorter than you, about 2-3 inches, right?
Yes, they're like 6'2", yes, sir, somewhere around there.
Right. And is he more of a candidate to play more point guard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. overall, two things that impressed me about this, looking at your team, reviewing what you had last year and seeing what you had this year. One thing that really impressed me was how young you were last year. I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew you were young, but everybody was like, almost everybody was either like a freshman or a sophomore. That's got to be encouraging going into this season, no?
Yes, sir. Just to have all the guys coming back, I feel like we're inseparable. I just feel like we're all locked in on one goal.
Yeah. And you should make that next step. The other thing I was impressed with is you have a lot of guys that are like 6'6" and taller, including, yourself listed as 6'6". But you do lack a 7-foot rim protector. You don't have like a guy who just swats them all away. Is that a concern this season, or do you? I think the tallest guy you have is 6'9".
Yeah. Okay. So I wouldn't say it's a concern. Just how hard we're willing to work on defense on the defensive end. I feel like we're just gonna that area right there. We have bigs that are able to step up to that challenge and compete with the other bigs.
Right. Yeah. You definitely have the girth, but you just don't have the length. But but you did rank near the top in both offensive and defensive efficiency last season. So, yeah, and steal percentage, you led the league as a team. So, and you were a big part of that.
Yeah.
This season, JMU figures to be very good again. Maybe not as good as last year, but they figure to be pretty good. Arkansas State, who I think finished 4th right behind you guys, should be improved and should be right there in the mix.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how are the Trojans shaping up? How does this team compare to last season? And is this squad ready to take the next step, being March Madness?
Yes, sir. Last year, I feel we were more dependent on Spud for his scoring and his ability to get us going. But this year, I feel like everybody, we've all been in the gym, so we've all been working on our game, evolving. So I feel like we all able to start something from scratch. I mean, and then those are two formidable opponents like JMU and Ark State. There are no pushovers. So when we're going there, we're going with a chip on our shoulder, being that they both beat us last year. So
right. But you did beat App State last year. Yeah. All right. And you have them both, Arkansas State and JMU, on the schedule, because I know it's kind of an uneven schedule, isn't it, in the Sun Belt?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Got one last question for you. You seem to be a gregarious, talkative, outgoing person. What do you like off the court? What do you like to do beside basketball? Go ahead.
I'm really like, I'm one of the friendly kind of dudes. Like I like to keep have fun with the team. I love being around the team. Like it's the funny moments we have. I play the game. A big Warzone guy. Like I feel like I sit there and play that all day.
Right.
That's really it.
Okay.
Off the court, yeah.
All righty. That's what most guys say. Most guys are in the gaming. Yep. All right, Myles. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I wish you and the team the best this season. I think you have a lot to look forward to with the number of returners and the youth gaining experience. That should be a real positive for you guys. And I hope you come back and visit us in the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Myles.
Yes, sir.
This is a conference, I think, of all the conferences we talked about, may have the best chance of getting 2 teams in. Last year, they had James Madison was the conference representative in the tournament, but Appalachian State actually won the regular season. It was Appalachian State split with JMU during the season, and they had a lot of talent. Unfortunately, most of those guys could have returned, but they didn't. They went elsewhere. So Appalachian State, the cupboard's pretty bare. James Madison, we could say the same thing. They lost a ton of players, including Player of the Year Terrence Edwards Jr., but they really did a nice job in the portal. and I think will be back in the mix again this year. What are your thoughts on the Sun Belt?
And something you're leaving out here is the coaching change. Mark Byington going to Vanderbilt, but how about one of the best mid-major coaches in Preston Spradlin jumping in here? And I think long term, before he potentially jet sets for another job, Rich, James Madison, great facilities, a lot of money. And even, you know, with football going to single A, who's also performed very well, it's helped everything. There's a lot of money here, a lot of resources, and I think there's a really, really good spot for Preston Spradlin, not too far from where he was at Moorhead. So I absolutely think they're going to be right up there. How about Mark Freeman that didn't play last year? And that Moorhead team is still good and still competitive. He now comes over. Hopefully he's healthy. So JMU, I think, is at the top, but I'm looking at Arkansas State here because you want to talk about a coach that came in last year. How about the job that Brian Hodgson has done? Competitive last year, known as a terrific recruiter. Alabama was on that Nate Oates staff when that team made the 1 seed, and even though they lost to San Diego State, what a great team that was. And you look at who he's – not only do they have transfers coming, he's going to get Joseph Pinion from Arkansas, who played very seldom, if at all, for Musselman at Arkansas the last 2 years. Brings in Rashad Marshall from Ole Miss. But I want to talk on a freshman here, Josh Hill. Well, I believe when he committed there was a 4-star recruit, and I think still is a 3-4-star recruit, depending on where you look. Like,
yeah,
this dude can recruit, and he's doing it even at Arkansas State in the Sun Belt. So with the returners coming back, Darian Ford, I believe, another Arkansas guy as well that he got to come over there.
And a high recruit at that.
Yeah. The returners, the transfers, the big fella Josh Hill coming in. This is going to be a really good team with Brian Hodgson. And if he jet sets for another job, good for him. But as long as he's here, he's going to be able to recruit. He's going to get players, and this team is going to stay there at the top of the Sun Belt as long as he's there. So I love JMU. Preston Spradlin was a terrific hire. He was a very, very good coach at Moorhead. But I'm going to go Arkansas State here, Rich. I think this is the year. Even in year 2, I think Brian Hodgson's that good of a recruiter and that he's going to put that much talent on the floor that they're going to be able to win the Sun Belt.
Yeah. I agree. I like Arkansas State to win this conference. And you mentioned some of the guys, but, you know, of their top 7 players from last year, now this is a team that finished 4th. The regular season standings were App State, JMU, Troy, and Arkansas State. So all 4, those top 4 teams were very good teams. And they bring back 5 of their top 7. They add Kobe Julian from Louisiana, who was an all-conference player. He switches teams. So not only is it a kick in the teeth to Louisiana, but he goes on to Arkansas to bolster their roster. They bring over Joseph Pinion from Arkansas, sharpshooter, former high recruit. Rashad Marshall, you mentioned, former high recruit. And then the recruiting class, including Hill, they also have 2 guys that were very close to top 200 guys, and forward Justin Johnson and small forward Rashawn King. So this team is loaded. It really is. And Isaiah Nelson, a great shot blocker. So, you know, a lot of the teams we're talking about here do not have rim protection. So not only does Arkansas State have the Hill coming in at center, but they also have an incumbent center who can get it done, who's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Isaiah Nelson. JMU, the problem they have is not only do they have to replace Edwards, but they have to replace sharpshooter Noah Friedel, who went on to the pros. TJ Bickerstaff went on to the pros. Julian Wooden went on to the pros. And then Jalen Carey, who was one of their stars in the, toward the end of last year, was a freshman. Vernon Carey's younger brother. He moved on to Vanderbilt, followed his coach to Vanderbilt. So they have a lot to replace. Now, they did do a really nice job in the portal. Noah Williams, I think maybe he hasn't played well since his sophomore year. And last year he didn't play at all because of injury. He had his, the year before that was cut short by injury. But if you look at Noah Williams, what he did his sophomore year at Washington, he was an up and coming pro prospect, a combo guard with good size. So he's probably their most exciting recruit, assuming he's back to his old self. So my pick, though, for player of the year is the guy we just interviewed, and that's Myles Rigsby, the sophomore from Troy, who last year was the freshman of the year in this conference. He played 26 minutes per game, averaged over 11 points per game, 44% from the field, 41 from three, 82 from the free throw line, 4.3 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.4 blocks. So this is a guard who can stuff the stat sheet. He's 6'6", so he's got great size. So he's my pick, though it might be a little bit of a dark horse pick. Who's your pick for Conference Player of the Year?
Yeah, I'm gonna roll with you. I'm gonna roll with you with Mr. Myles Rigsby here. Let's shake on it. I would take Darian Ford because I think Arkansas State's gonna win, but I'll roll with Mr. Rigsby.
Yeah, what scares me about Ford is I think Rigsby had better numbers last year, first of all. But secondly, there is a lot of other talent on the Arkansas State team. So we're going back to that dilemma of, does Ford stand out on a superior team where Rigsby will stand out in his team? I still think Troy's going to be pretty good this year. And I still think they'll have a winning record. But yeah, I don't think they could compete with Arkansas State. All right, so we're going to wind up here with the WAC before we do our mid-major top 10. Last year in the WAC, first of all, realignment will repeat that Stephen F. Austin and Rio Grande Valley are leaving for the Southland, the conference we just did. Last year, the regular season champ pretty clearly was Grand Canyon, and they won the tournament, and they were a very loaded team. They won one game in the tournament and then lost a close one to Alabama in their second round game in the NCAA tournament. Tyon Grant Foster won Player of the Year in this conference, and he comes back along with a number of other players. They returned basically 5 of their top 7 players. Also had some nice transfers come in. Also had a nice recruiting class. Is there anybody who compete with Grand Canyon?
Nope. Nope. They bring back all 3 of their guards. Yeah. They bring back all 3 of their guards. Tyon Grant Foster is probably going to lead Division I in scoring. He's going to have the freedom to do whatever he wants. He's a superior player in this conference. And guess what? God forbid he is an off night. You still have Ray Harrison, who's also one of the best scorers in this conference and best players.
Who I think was Player of the Year before Foster.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you could Grant Foster's better, but it's like these guys are so dynamic and can score with the ball in their hands. It's like you can take your pick with either of these guys. But Tyon Grant Foster is going to overshadow Ray Harrison, unfortunately, even with how good of a player he is and how good of a scorer he is. They have the two best scorers in this conference of those two. Mm-hmm. And no one's going to touch them. But they bring back Colin Moore, who can score in his own right and defend. They bring back their big fella and their center, Duke Brennan, Loke Ward, a guy that's what this team does. Their transfers down. You want to play more? Come here. They can have guys transfer up from small conferences, but you want to play more? Come down here. We'll be very competitive, much like McNeese. So they do lose Gabe McLaughlin. Big guy, can shoot, a terrific athlete, really, really good athlete.
Good shot blocker.
Oh, yeah. With Javon Blackshear leaving, it's tough because he came off the injury and just never was the same. And then Tyon Grant Foster had stepped in his spot. So good luck.
And I believe Blackshear was the Player of the Year before Harrison. So I think they've had 3 different Players of the Year in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, they've just been a factory of good guards. And it's just unfortunate because he was a good player. He really, really was. And coming back from the injury, like I said, it's like, well, Tyon Grant Foster's in here, and we have a bigger guy who's just a better scorer. So good luck to him as he moves on to California.
Defender too.
Yeah, absolutely. Longer, better athlete. So not his fault, but they brought in one of the best transfers, if not the best in the country last year with how well he played there. Yeah. You look at the guys they brought in. They get Mekhi Williams from UT Arlington, one of the best players in this conference as well.
He was the freshman of the year last year.
He'll just be in a different conference.
And then they're going to bring in the same conference.
Same conference. So they bring in Jacoby Coles to fill in the power forward spot. look, guy with high major experience, played on a TCU team that was physical, that was tough, that was nasty. So
he's a lot like McLaughlin, except he's not the shot blocker McLaughlin was.
or the athlete that he is.
Right.
You're losing
Coles,
that.
Coles will get you rebounds. He can score inside. He can score outside, and he's a tough physical player. So he's, I mean, if he blocks shots, he'd be a perfect replacement, but he's still a very good replacement.
Yeah, and I think you're also looking at, here's another. I'm not saying that Dennis Evans is going to be near what Tyon Grant Foster was as far as scoring because the guy's a center, but I think you're seeing a similar situation where it didn't work out at Louisville with some medical stuff that I feel like we didn't really hear too much about, but it kept him sidelined.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you look at a team like Grand Canyon that could use a wiry, long, legit 7-foot center here.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can actually be a good player to back up Duke Brennan.
Yes.
So I think that could actually be an underrated addition. If this guy is what we thought he was, being the highly talented recruit that he was going to Louisville.
He was a borderline 5-star, number 28 overall.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy and work that out and find his footing here, like he's not going to be asked too much of him right away. But we could look back at that and be like, hey, that was a really, really good addition if this guy's able to pop like Grant Foster was. So they're taking a gamble on him that I think is a really, really big high upside swing that could be very good. They're replacing Gabe McLaughlin. And again, there's some deficiencies with Jacoby Coles that Gabe McLaughlin had. They're not exactly replacing with him, but he'll still be one of the bigger, tougher guys that has Big 12 experience in this conference. They bring in Sammy Yaney. I think that's how you say his last name. They brought in a top 100 recruit. Like that's what
top
this
100,
program is
right?
becoming. Resources, money. They're publicly traded. They don't have football. Their home court is great. Their fan base is great. There's a lot to like with this program. That's why they're leaving for the WCC, but nobody's going to touch them. McNeese, Grand Canyon, they're probably going to be back to two of the best mid-majors in the country, and they could be. This is another team that's going to be dangerous if they're able to make the tournament.
Oh yeah, and I think depending on their schedule, which a lot of schedules are, I don't even know if they're published yet or they're just getting published. But if this is a team that could earn a couple of big wins in the season and get into the top 25, they're likely to stay there all year long.
Right.
This is another team that could go 30-2. And God forbid they lose in the tournament. But the reason why we put Grand Canyon and McNeese, their conferences in here, because we feel that they're so good that there is a chance, depending on how their schedule shakes out, that there is a chance, let's say Seattle, who's probably the second best team in the WAC this year, and both of them are moving to WCC next year. But if Seattle would somehow say knock Grand Canyon off in the conference tournament, Grand Canyon resume might be strong enough, because people who know basketball know that Grand Canyon and McNeese are nothing to sneeze at. And I want to add too, Styles Phillips, top 200 recruit. He probably won't even play this year. Is on this team. And here's the other thing about this team. Unlike many of the teams we've talked about, their roster construction is almost perfect. I mean, they have guys at every position that aren't really going to be playing out of position. They have legitimate 7-footers, in Brennan and Dennis Evans. Now, I will say Dennis Evans, when he played last year, he kind of looked like Manute Bol or Bol. He just looked all arms and legs. His body he just couldn't move his body very well. So hopefully he's added the muscle. He had a lot of time off, so he had a lot of time to work on that body. And if he could put on some muscle, maybe we will see the guy that some people thought were a 5-star, and definitely he was a 4-star for sure. Another thing about this team I want to mention, you got guys who can play defense. Grant Foster can play defense. Luke War can play defense. Colin Moore can play defense. You got guys that are willing not just to score, but they will get, they'll get in your face too on the other side of the ball. So player of the year, I don't really see anybody challenging Tyon Grant Foster. Really, I really don't see that in this conference.
Yeah, and barring an injury, maybe it could be his teammate Ray Harrison that challenged
exactly.
So I just want to point out Grand Canyon's non-conference schedule because it is starting to flood in with a lot of teams releasing them. They actually released it. I believe this is kind of early. They did this. I hold on a second. August 29th, they put it out, but I'll read you the graphic and just touch on some key ones because it is for a WAC team. It's a very, very good schedule, but they have the money and the resources to make these trips.
Right.
So they're going to get Western Kentucky at home. They play in Phoenix. They've been playing Arizona State, I think, every year. So they're going to get Arizona State, Stanford, Georgia, Louisiana Tech that we talked about, St. Louis at home. I think they just did a home and home with St. Louis. So two of the best mid-majors in the country. Should be two really good games at both spots. And they're going to play Bryant as well. Not an all.
No, but no, legitimate team.
Yeah. Even in a small conference, like it's a very, very nice non-conference slate with some power conference foes on there and some good mid-majors as well. So
you still would like to see them play in Arizona or Kentucky or Ohio State or somebody. Are they going to any tournaments?
I don't believe they're going to any tournaments, but like the Stanford game and the Georgia game are both neutral sites. So they're going to do stuff like that.
I can't believe Will Wade. Now, he might not be popular in the coaching community. Who knows? Will Wade's probably a love him or hate him type of guy. But, that'd
be great. A GCU McNeese home and home, I think, would be awesome for both parties.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you with that. You need the cachet. I think even though McNeese might be better than Stanford, it's probably more valuable to beat Stanford just because of their name.
Yeah, Power 5. They're gonna like their net will probably be a little bit higher. But
instead of hitting up the mid, teams like Arizona State and Stanford, who at best are going to finish in the middle of their conference, you really want to get some of those top teams, on there. But maybe North Carolina or Kentucky and teams like that just they're just not gonna risk it.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's a big proponent of it, Rich. I think you see this team's very good, and God forbid they take some losses in the WAC that could drop you down. I think there's some serious validity to that for sure.
All right. So now we'll do our mid-major top 10, and I think you're probably pretty clear on who we like here the best, and that's Grand Canyon and McNeese. Jake and I both have Grand Canyon 1 and McNeese 2. Number 3 is where we start to diverge a little bit. Jake has High Point at 3. I have High Point at 4. I have Arkansas State at 3. Jake has UC Santa Barbara at 4. We both have Ohio at 5. Jake has Princeton at 6. They just missed my top 10. I have Murray State at 6. Jake has Arkansas State at 7. I have James Madison at 7. We both have Western Kentucky at 8. Jake has Charleston at 9. I have Wofford at 9. Jake has Samford at 10. I have Louisiana Tech at 10. I went out to 12 because I can't get enough of this stuff. So I had Sam Houston at 11 and Samford at 12. As you will know, out of my top 12, we had 3 teams from, now I'm going to draw a blank, the Sun Belt. And you had 2 teams. No, you didn't have did you have JMU?
No, I took them out. I did some last minute swap until.
Okay. All right. So, but still, I'd say the best representative conference here would probably be the ASUN with the Sun Belt with Arkansas State and JMU and Louisiana Tech, right?
Yeah. Maybe they end up being 2 big leagues. Maybe.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on this top 10?
All good. Ready to start moving on, Rich. We're getting close. There's a couple charity exhibitions going to be played the middle of October. We're almost here, Rich.
Yeah.
Knocking on the door. Season's knocking on the door.
I want to say something about, I think, at the top 4, I think McNeese and Grand Canyon are clearly the top teams here. I really like Arkansas State to be the third best team, followed by High Point. And I think after the top four, there's a pretty significant drop off between High Point. You had High Point 3, I had them 4, and then we both had Ohio 5. I think there's a big drop off between those schools. And I put the depth charts here, and you look at Grand Canyon, and this is what I'm talking about, perfect roster construction. Look at this depth chart. I mean, they have every position filled, 2 levels, 2 deep, and they have true centers, at the 5 position. The problem with McNeese is they don't really have a 7-footer. Christian Shoemate, who's like maybe 6'7", is their best shot blocker. If he would get hurt, McNeese could be in trouble. Arkansas State also has 2 true shot blockers. And same thing with High Point. High Point has 1 shot blocker in Bodo, but then there isn't really anybody close to his size on the team. But I think what I look for in my top 10 was a nice balance of scoring, defense, and size. And a lot of these mid-major teams just don't have the size. But the top 2 on our list, Grand Canyon and Arkansas State are the ones that have legitimate D1 high major size on their team. So there we go. All right. So that wraps up this week. As always, I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank Jake for staying awake. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back next week to continue our conference previews and talk with more special guests. Any final thoughts, Jake?
We're almost there.
Almost there.
Almost here, man. We're almost there.
Some people, when the Leafs change, it means football season. To me, it means basketball season's about to start.
I'm a football guy. It means football season for me too, Rich.
Oh, I'm a football guy too. It's just basketball comes first. Now, didn't always. Not when I covered the NFL, but does now. All right, buddy. Good seeing you.
Yep. Take care.